Daniel Jones ain't it. No disrespect to Daniel Jones. He's a fine pro. But in terms of next level stuff, the contract ain't it. So the New York Giants need to craft their future, and they need to find the guy. And if the Giants are picking, top 7, top 8 again next year, then people's job status is going to get a little shaky. So what Shane and Dable, specifically Shane, needs to do is be proactive, target a guy, target a team, make the trade, get the quarterback, and go from there.
Here's the problem, though. You don't want to force the issue, right? I mean, we've talked about this many times, dating back months now, and while I agree that Daniel Jones ain't it, and ultimately for this Giants team to have success, they're going to have to find the next quarterback, but what if they can't get one in this draft? What if the one that they really want, they can't get with the top 2, top 3 picks? New England's not trading out. Washington's not trading out. And even if they do trade up to number 4, is JJ McCarthy the guy? Not that we think he's the guy or not.
Yeah.
Is that the guy that they want? They can't force the issue. While I think it is the number 1 need, and if they don't find a quarterback in the draft, and by the way, they could find one later in the rounds too, and maybe I'd prefer that if it's not McCarthy. With McCarthy, who the hell knows? You hear rumors about, maybe he'll be there at 6. Maybe he's going to go late first round. Maybe the Washington Commanders are going to take him at number 2. Maybe the Giants trade up. I don't know what to believe about JJ McCarthy other than I don't believe he is worthy of trading up for. If he's there at 6 and you love him, then maybe you select him. But I would not do it just because they need a quarterback. They better make sure it's the right quarterback.
Well, that's their job. Their job is to identify the player. My job is to tell them what to do.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
right,
and make sure you get the right guy.
But if you tell them to get a quarterback, they need a quarterback.
They do.
I agree with you.
Yep.
But don't you think that stretches it? What if they say we love this guy,
but he's not available?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, listen, you got to find the guy that you like, and that might be Michael Penix. I mean, it might be something that's unconventional here, and it might be McCarthy. I know that McCarthy is very much, he elicits a very definitive reaction. Nobody is benign on McCarthy. It's either, listen, I love this guy. Harbaugh coached him up. He's the real deal. I believe the workout reports. He's the guy. Move up and get him more. No way. He's a product of hype, and we've seen that a lot over the years. Sam Darnold, we saw it with Zach Wilson. Hell, we saw it with Daniel Jones years ago when he came out 6 out of Duke. So I get it. I'm not saying that it's the perfect roadmap to the future, but think about this, Sal. The Giants went out and made an amazing trade getting the kid Burns from Carolina, who is a game wrecker as a sack artist. You got him, you got Dexter Lawrence, you got Kayvon Thibodeau. You've got a good defense in place here. I say this because the Giants aren't going 5-12 next year. And if they do, we're going to have to really reevaluate the GM and the coach. We're just going to. There's a lot of noise around the coach this year about, obviously with Wink and coach is not happy and some energy in the building that might not be flying long term. Giants got to win a few games this year, and I think that they will. So if they go 9-8, even 8-9, but 9-8, they're not going to be in position to draft the quarterback. And by the way, at least not one that's appealing. Next year's quarterback crop stinks, and that's part of my evaluation process. Now, that doesn't mean whether it's Cam Ward from Miami or the kid Rourke from Indiana or Deion's son. None of these kids, and I'm not Mel Kiper, I'm not but
by the way, they don't. Even the gurus don't know what the hell they're talking about.
I got you, but true. But the general consensus is none of the college quarterbacks for 2025 are even worthy of a top 15 pick. So if you think the Giants will be competitive this year, and I do, then you gotta make your move now.
Right, but wouldn't they be better off, and I know you're not opposed to this, but just hear me out here, wouldn't they be better off, let's say Harrison Jr. somehow falls to them.
Mm-hmm.
They get him, you get the best player, instead of reaching for a quarterback who you might like, might not, I don't know, McCarthy, and then take a quarterback later. As long as they come away with a quarterback in this draft, I'm okay with it. It doesn't have to be a top guy, but it has to be a quarterback that they love. I just don't want them to take one just to take one. Obviously, it's a position of need. I don't think anybody's going to dispute that at this point, although I know there are some Giant fans who still believe in Daniel Jones, and he is going to be the starting quarterback, and maybe the hope is that, hey, one more year, draft a lineman, get a stud receiver, let's see what DJ could go out there and do. You might get to see that anyway, but even in that scenario, I still want them to get a quarterback. I just don't want them to reach. And when you start hearing, whether it's the Schrager mock draft or when you start hearing about McCarthy, you start hearing the Giants are going to trade up to get McCarthy, where months ago it was, maybe at 6, maybe they'd consider McCarthy, or he was like a mid to late first round guy. I'm not. I feel like that starts to reek of desperation. Similar, BT, to Yamamoto, where the early numbers on Yamamoto were nowhere near $320 million. It was all about 150, 180, maybe 200. Then it starts to go up, and you start to, you feel the team's getting antsy. Oh, I really want him. Now I'll go up to 300. And then they start getting way in over their head, and then you realize, you know what the hell are we doing here? Paying a guy $320 million who's never pitched a game in the big leagues before. You don't want it to be, oh, well, we need a quarterback, and you're reaching and trading up to get a guy who, arguably could have been the end of the first round anyway.
877-337-6666. BT and Sal on the Fan. Brandon Tierney, Sal Licata Show. Good morning, everybody. Got a couple of good baseball wins. We'll get to that later. And we got the Sixers. We'll get to that as well, and you know that. We're inside of our Town Fair Tire studio. Friends of Town Fair, remind you that you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Listen, I get it. When you do something out of, I don't want to say desperation, but out of need or necessity, I'm going to downgrade it, 1 or 2 levels below complete sheer utter desperation, like the Giants are at with the quarterback position, because most of us believe, as I said before, with all due respect, Jones ain't it. You do things, then you kind of trick your mind into believing this is the guy, this is the answer, this is the solution. And that usually causes a lot of mistakes. I as a general thought, a philosophy, a drafting premise, sounds not wrong. But then there's the flip side. Okay, what if you don't do anything? Let's say you get the wide receiver. And by the way, I'm not even sure Harrison's going to be the top receiver going. That's even up for debate. But whatever. Let's just say, Harrison or Alt, the offensive line. I don't know, whatever, right? And you have a pretty decent season. Or even if you don't have a good season, there's no quarterbacks next year. What do you do next year? Who's your quarterback? The only thing that matters in the NFL is a quarterback, which is why the Jets brought in Aaron Rodgers and gave him every key to the building to let him do whatever he wants, because they're desperate, like they did with Brett Favre. That's why when you hear Tom Brady on podcasts talking about maybe, somebody knocks on my door midseason, I might be interested. I got news for you. Depending upon what the ownership of the Raiders thing, if he can even do it, somebody will knock on his door because he's a quarterback. And until the Giants get theirs, they're not winning.
But I'm not going to reach in the draft, even though it's a position of need, because that can harm you years to come. If you reach and you miss, you are screwed. If you just stand pat and say, well, we need good players elsewhere anyway, and I don't love this particular quarterback, or I'm not trading up for this particular quarterback, and a stud lineman is there that could be there for the next 10 years, a tackle, whatever it may be, or a stud wide receiver that you think could help you out long term, you'll figure it out eventually, whether that means free agency, whether it means via trade.
Free agency with a quarterback?
Yeah, well, whatever.
I mean, come on.
I'm just saying it's an
Kirk
answer.
Cousins.
Yeah.
When does that happen?
I mean, the Jets traded for Aaron Rodgers, whether it's a trade or free. They're going
How's
to.
it working out?
Yeah, I understand.
Come on.
Well, yeah, but you could also try to draft him and miss. And when you draft and miss, it sets you back 4 years. I mean, the Jets had to do that with trading for Rodgers because they missed on Zach Wilson, because they missed on Sam Darnold, and on and on and on. If you're reaching just because you need a quarterback and you take a player, let's just say JJ McCarthy at 6, or you trade up to him to get him at 4, where in reality, where if you were ranking the players just based on sheer players, forget about position, McCarthy would be 30th or whatever it may be.
The big board kind of deal.
Whatever, your big board. And you're skipping over a guy who's, going to be a stud for the next 10 years, but you go based on need. That's how it can be dangerous. I'm not disagreeing. I don't believe in Daniel Jones. For the Giants to have the ultimate success, they have to get a quarterback, but it doesn't have to be now.
Okay, let's get to it. Obviously, Giant fans, you got a lot to chew on here. Jet fans as well. We'll do a little Jet draft stuff tomorrow, later on today, and obviously leading up to next week here. 877-337-6666. BT and Sal. Zach is in Monroe. What's cooking there, Zach?
What's going on, guys? Good morning. So, I just want to say this with the Giants. They got to keep the pick at 6. Because Neighbors is the pick. They have to take Neighbors, and then you can take a quarterback late round, like in the 2nd or the 3rd round. I think Penix will be there in the 2nd round, and I think they should take him. Either him or even Spencer Rattler. I wouldn't mind him. Somebody they can build upon. I know Penix doesn't have the best intangibles, but neither does
So then why would you
Allen.
draft him? See, this is what I mean. Why would you draft him?
Because you can build on what he currently has. I mean, Like, Josh Allen wasn't the best quarterback at Wyoming. Like, when he was at Wyoming, he didn't have the best intangibles. He just had the big arm, and he made bad decisions. And look at what he is now. I mean, he hasn't done much in the playoffs, but I mean, he's been in the MVP running, since 2020. And I think Debo could do that again with Penix. And then you have neighbors to do it with.
All right, exactly. But here's the problem. I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying that there's only one path to attack this. I gave you my path. I'm looking to get a quarterback in the first round. That's why. And by the way, you could trade back. We keep talking about trading up. If you are able to really get a good read on the draft and you trust your intel and you trust your contacts around the league and you think there's a way to jump back a slot or two and get McCarthy, I think you could do that as well. People are not incorporating that, but I think everything's on the table.
I think the Giants are in a spot where they have many needs. Obviously, in the NFL, the biggest need is always going to be quarterback. But when you reach, and teams reach all the time, that's how you get yourself in trouble. And they are in a spot where they could take the best player available and it's going to help them.
But they could also miss. They can. That's the thing about the draft. Like, they can take the guy who's the best available, O-lineman, D-end, whatever, cornerback, wide receiver, and he's a stiff. You don't know.
But wouldn't you rather go down with thinking who was the best player as opposed to drafting by need?
Yeah, I do. That's a good point.
That happens all the time. You're right.
I'd rather go with my instincts, but I'd hope my instincts would lead me to the most important position on the board, which is quarterback. Now, if it's a massive Hail Mary, I got it. If it's close, I'm going quarterback.
Let's just use whatever. Harrison Jr., you want to put him up there. And even that's like, he's the guaranteed first wide receiver.
He's not, by the way.
Yeah, now he's not. I mean, they changed their tune. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So who the hell knows really what's going on? What's smoke screens, what's legit, what's not.
Yep.
If Marvin Harrison Jr. is there, you compare him at his position to what JJ McCarthy, for example, is at his position, there is no debate who's the better player. Right now, we're not saying who's going to be.
Honestly, I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is talking about it. Marvin Harrison Jr. is either the top or number 2 wide receiver off the board.
Some people think he's number 3.
McCarthy is not.
Some people think he's number 3.
Well, I mean, whatever. I guess to each their own.
Yeah,
point is,
that's the point.
Point is, more people, I would think, the people in the know, feel more comfortable about Marvin Harrison Jr. being a top wide receiver than they would on taking a flyer on JJ McCarthy, who would only go that high because it is a position of need and of high importance. I would rather, if I'm the Giants, and have needs at O-line, wide receiver, whatever position you want to talk about. I wouldn't go defense myself. But
me neither.
But I would go offensive line or wide receiver. And if I feel better about that O-lineman or wide receiver, I'm taking him over a quarterback unless I love that quarterback. I can't do it just because they are in dire need of a quarterback.
Let me get Robert Gladstone, BT and Sal here on the Fan. Rob, what's going on, bud? How are you?
Good morning. Good morning, guys.
Hello.
Listen, I agree wholeheartedly with you guys. I don't see the fascination in this guy McCarthy, honestly.
Well, then you don't agree with me. You agree with Sal, which is fine. But me and Sal are saying 2 different things. Keep going.
Okay, and regardless,
yeah.
The Giants. We all need the Giants need to stretch the field. They need a wide receiver, or there's going to be 2 quality offensive linemen going to be right there. They need to do that. One of the 2, offensive linemen or a wide receiver to stretch the field.
Yeah.
And I love Harrison. I really do.
Okay.
Anyway, that's really all I got.
Yeah, but Rob, hold on a second. Well, if that's all you got, I appreciate the call. Thanks a lot, bud. Thanks for checking in. But don't you think it's easier, and we know the answer, it's not quite the same as running back, but you think it's easier to find a quarterback in round 2 or a wide receiver in round 2? It's wide receiver.
Right.
So,
but it's not about finding somebody. It's about getting the best players. Ultimately, even if you let's just say the Giants hit on a great quarterback. And we're still going to say, well, he needs the weapons around him. I mean, it's the same thing. He just needs the weapons around him. He needs this, the wide receiver, the offensive lineman. He's great, but he needs the guy to protect him. So there really is no wrong answer when you're building a team, because ultimately, even with Rodgers, what is it? Well, they got to be able to protect. They got to get him some weapons. The Jets need a tight end. They need a top receiver. Well, do they? They have one of the best quarterbacks ever. So why do they need all the other stuff? Because it takes a team to win football games. Yes, having a quarterback is of the utmost importance, but you also need the other positions, and that's where the Giants are lacking right now. It's not like there's one glaring need. There are multiple needs. I'm just not reaching as much as I want them to get a quarterback, and they're not going to become relevant until they get a new quarterback and change, as far as I'm concerned, because Jones ain't it. I'm not reaching.
Do you agree that there was a little, and it was a little unexpected based on what they did a year ago, but do you agree that there was elements of heat strong, but a little smoke around the head coach this offseason and late in the season, like,
Yeah.
oh, God, what's going on with this? Okay, okay. And
Somebody else does, too.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get to Bill a little bit.
Belichick already thrown his resume on the table. We will get to that, BT and Sal on the Fan. But I say that because that extends up a little bit to Joe Shane, a little bit. Now, I think they've got the right duo. I do. But last year was messy. And last year, in large parts, was just ugly and unwatchable from a football aesthetical point of view. Giants were pretty gross most of the season, even though they scrapped out a couple of wins late. Point being, if they are bad this year and they don't have a quarterback, like they go 5-6-11, I'm just saying if they do, and they don't have a young quarterback in the building that they could at least say, hey, we're hitting reset. We didn't draft Jones. Jones got hurt. He's making 40-something mil. We got to rebuild this team out. They are going to be out of that building quicker than they would be if they draft a quarterback, even if it's the wrong one coming up next week. So even if you disagree with McCarthy or what I think they should do you at least agree that they've got to be thinking that on some level in terms of self-preservation?
Yeah, I mean, but if they draft a quarterback, it kind of resets, right? Because it's going to give them 3 or 4 years or so.
That's what I'm saying.
I know. I mean, but that's the wrong thing to do.
It might be, but you can't tell me that they're not thinking that on some level. They are.
I don't. And we'll hear from Joe Shane today, right? Meeting the media at 12 o'clock. So hopefully we have some sound from him.
Hoff, can we find out? Can we play that? We're not sure yet.
Not that he's going to give an answer, directly on that, but at least get a good feel for what Shane is thinking here. Look, I'm fine with them taking a quarterback. I'm not fine with them reaching for a quarterback.